Hey everyone, welcome to the Single Player Experience Podcast, the perfect place for single player gamers to find out about good single player games to play and the process of making games at times. And, I happen to have here an expert at making games. He is an esteemed guest. I had him on the show once before, and he absolutely blew my mind with his knowledge of all things video games. A really cool guest and a really cool person that I just love talking to about the creation of video games. So, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is the one, the only, the video game wizard himself, Matt Hackett. Matt, how you doing today?
Oh, what an intro. I can't live up to that. Oh, thanks so much. I got to say, I've been on a few podcasts in the past, but this is the first time I've ever been invited back. So thank you so
What?
much for breaking that streak. I don't think it's anything I did. I think it's just sometimes it's a one and done kind of situation, but really good to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Matt, man, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show. So, what have you been up to lately?
What have I been up to? I'm so glad you asked because I've been working on my game called Witchmore, and I finally have a Steam page, which is why I'm so excited to talk about it. Because previously it was like, well, I wrote a little blog about it or something, but like having a Steam page makes it a little more real. Like if you're listening to this right now, you can go to store.steamgames.com and then search for Witchmore, wish list that game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I've been working on. It's a really cool game. It's about witchcraft. It's a battle arena or a bullet heaven or whatever you want to call it. You wield powerful magic to destroy the undead, and the hook of the game is you can take your little animal friends with you. So you can make friends with a ghost cat. You can make friends with the epitome, all the witchcraft stuff you'd expect, like a black cat or an owl. Like those things are going to be in the game as your little like animal companions that fight along with you. So that's Witchmore. That's been mostly what I've been working on outside of like the got a blog, got a podcast, got a YouTube, all that good stuff.
You're always like doing something, man. You're always doing something. You stay busy. So, but you also did something really cool a little while ago, and that's wrote a book. Can you tell people about this book?
Oh, well, thank you so much. Look at that. Look at that. Amazing segue here.
Yeah.
How to make a video game all by yourself. I always keep a copy right by me, handy so that I can shove it in front of the camera. But yeah, thanks for bringing it up. How to make a video game all by yourself is a book I wrote over a 2-year period. Spent a lot of time on it, but the book itself is nice and lean. It's only 200 pages. It's full of illustrations and quotes from some of your favorites, developers, and creators over the years. Yeah, I worked really hard on it. It's 10 lean chapters, and it kind of guides you through making your very first game all by yourself. And that includes doing everything that you want and as little as you want. If you want to make all the graphics, great. It kind of pushes you down that road. And if you want to go get some assets online and use those instead, and if you don't want to write any code, if you want to use, there's all these options these days for game engines. You don't have to learn, C++ and all these intimidating languages. You can learn drag and drop interfaces with stuff like Construct or Unreal Blueprints. And the book is really flexible. It lets you kind of make games however you want. So that's kind of my pitch for my book.
That is amazing. So you have a podcast, you have a YouTube channel, you're making games, you wrote a book. What's next? I'm talking about like what is next on the creative sphere? You gonna do songwriting next?
Oh, I love that question. I get that sometimes. Hey, I'll put it out there. I want to make movies someday.
Like
it'll take me a long time to get there, and I got a lot of games I want to make first. But we're gonna see some of that popping up. Like you've probably heard about Friday Night at Freddy's. Messing up the title. They're making movies out of those horror games, right? And like we're gonna see more of that stuff coming up. And like I'm gonna get in there. I love movies, man. How fun would it be to work on especially a movie based on your game? Like, hey, down the road, guy's got a dream, right? Maybe someday.
I like that.
I would love to get there. Yeah, I like pretty like all the cool things in the world that I grew up experiencing: movies, TV, games, like all my favorite things. Yeah, I want to take a swing at it. I want to try all those things.
Man, that's really cool.
Focus, but yeah, like why not everything?
That's really cool. And who says you can't have it all, man? You can dive in and do a whole bunch of different things in life. Life is way too big and too vast for you just to like pinch yourself into just a small little hole.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, I read the average person, and who knows, like the world is such a big place, everybody's different, but like the average person switches careers something like every 7 years, which I think is kind of aligned with a lot of people I talk to. And that's a common thing, is not that you get bored in one industry, but like you get excited about another is more the thing. And a lot of times, you come in fresh I switched from web dev to games, and sometimes you bring a fresh perspective. Like sometimes people come from, say, psychology into game design, and they have this really unique angle on it because they know how the human brain works, and they can apply that to make really cool games.
That's really cool. So, how much research have like you had over the years in like video game creation? Like you had to like have spent like almost a decade plus in researching all this, right?
Yeah, I'm the kind of person where like my idea of a good time is I'm going to sit on the couch and I'm going to read some game dev articles or like watch some GDC videos. Yeah, it's kind of like what I do when I'm not making games. I have spent a significant amount of time just absorbing all that stuff. I think I've been to GDC 9 times, and I'm the kind of person who actually like I go to talks, like I go to parties and chat with people as well. But I also like to hit the talks and try to absorb as much information as I can. When I started my podcast, Make the Game, which is kind of the same thing as my newsletter, one of the first things I posted, it might have been my very first one, but it was like how to create a career's worth of knowledge or something, how to gather a career's worth of knowledge. And
Mhm.
I posted just so many links to all my favorite references, like the GDC Vault, GDC YouTube channel, Game Maker's Toolkit, gamedeveloper.com, is all these places to go and learn how to make games. It really feels like such a rich world to me now, because back in the day, there was like one book. I had access to like one book, you know what I mean? And like the internet didn't exist and all that. So these days, I'm just like, I feel overwhelmed with all these awesome game dev resources.
So, man, it seems like that's a reflection of like the game industry as a whole. Like all these resources have become vastly available for everyone. Just like gaming has become like this multi-billion-dollar industry to where like everybody's playing games, from like the people who are like close to like 2 to 3 years old all the way to people who are 80 years old and above. It's like everyone's playing games nowadays. So
Yeah.
how does that make you feel as a game developer, that there's so many people approaching the medium, that whereas like when you were starting to research this for the first time, like that you were scrambling to find like real good sources, you know?
Yeah, it has been interesting to see game development kind of finally hit the mainstream, because with something like music, it's been kind of I think democratized is the word people like to use for like now anybody can do it, and it's kind of been that way for a while now, where there's really good DAWs. It's a digital audio workstation,
Mhm.
is software you can go download, and a lot of times you are literally downloading and using the same software that your favorite mainstream artists use, and like a lot of times it's top of the line stuff like Pro Tools, but sometimes it's like some people use GarageBand straight up. They use the same thing that comes free with MacBook, and they ship songs that you hear later on the radio that makes $1 million, you know? So it's kind of like those tools have been in consumers' hands for a long time. And like really anybody can go make music. And it hasn't really been completely true for games until the most recent years. It's just like we're just now entering that state, right? Because just about 10 years ago or something, I don't remember the exact date, but you as a person couldn't just go publish on Steam, which was and is now the platform for PC games. Like if you want to make, you know, if you want to reach the biggest PC audience, your only avenue really was Steam for a while. There are maybe other big publishers, right? But you couldn't just get on Steam, and that was huge, right? You also didn't have access to some of these tools. Like, are you really going to build your own, game from the ground up, your own game engine, your own huge 3D renderer?
Mhm.
We didn't have access to things like Unity. It's relatively new software as far as computing goes, and we're kind of spoiled by that now. But it's really cool to see, and like several years ago, Indie Game the movie came out, and that kind of elevated game dev to like, hey, that's a thing people can do, and now there's better tools than ever, and people can just do it. And if you look at the scales of how many games are coming out across every platform, Google Play, Apple App Store, and Steam, it's a hockey stick, right?
Mhm.
So it is very interesting to see, because what happens is the problem changes from how in the world do you make a game to how in the world do you make a living making a game, right? Because now I've got this game, there's a million other games. So like, how do I find that audience? How does it stand out, right? And yeah, when anyone can make a game, that's the problem. Is it's like that noise, that crowd. So that's the
Mhm.
current problem I think indies are seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had a interesting question that a listener wrote in, a couple of questions actually. And one of them I saw and instantly thought that if that's not a Matt question, I don't know what is at this point.
Love it.
Because I'm not a person who's ever made a video game, and I'm not really equipped to answer these type of questions. But I happen to know a couple of experts, and you are on the top of that list. So, Matt, I gotta
Happy to be here.
ask, what makes a good indie game? Because I had a listener write in, and the listener, by the way, if you're listening, is Mario Miles. Mario Miles. So wrote in and said, what makes a good indie game? How often do you experience an indie game with a standout, unique concept? And with the volume of indies coming out, how do you create a unique concept to actually stand out? So a lot of questions there.
Great questions.
Yeah, heavy questions, by the way.
Yeah,
Absolutely
it
massive.
gets pretty deep.
Yeah, massively heavy questions. But go ahead, take it away, Matt.
Great. Yeah, I've got some notes here. These are really good questions, and I'll kind of cover them one by one. So, first, what makes a good indie game? And I have multiple tiers of answers for this one. I think the first one is just the easy answer, which is like, indie games can kind of be whatever they want to be. And so a good indie game is just if it makes the devs happy, right? Just make a game, put it on itch. There you go. It's good. Can you play it? It's good, right? That's completely fine. But I think that what we're wanting is some more meat on the bone, right? Like we kind of want a more thorough answer. So to me, right, like, and they're different to everybody. Some people might want indie games that challenge them or something like that. But this is a list from me. I like to see indie games that are made from a place of passion or interest, right? My favorite ones are the ones where they're a little uncommon, they're a little weird, and the person behind them is like, oh yes, I've got to make this. I'm so passionate about it. Like they're really into it. You know what I mean? Those are my favorite ones. I like an indie game that's kind of scrappy, is the word that I use. You can kind of tell when indie goes to more like triple I, where everything looks really polished. Like if the game looks like too much like triple A or something, it starts to be a little bit of a turnoff for me. Like the game can be beautiful, and a lot of indie games are beautiful and need to be beautiful to find their audiences, but I want to see this little scrappy edge to it. Like one of my favorite examples is probably Hotline Miami. I think that it's a game that like doesn't look that good, but the style and the grit and the filth and the blood, like it's a dirty, it's gorgeous in when you're playing it. It feels so but it's got this kind of scrappy feel to it. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like a AAA game. I think indie games, it's their best when they're unique, which I think everybody kind of wants. That's just my personal opinion. When they get a little bit samey, it starts to feel more like AAA. Like go when you go back to a reliable source, it's more of a AAA move than an indie move. And then lastly, for me, I want a game that feels genuine, right? Like sometimes you can kind of tell when someone is making something from a place that's a little cynical. It's maybe a bit of a money grab, and they're like, I'm not really into this. Like you want to see that genuine thing where if someone's making a game about food, it's because they're like a chef and they love food, that kind of a thing.
Okay.
So
Matt,
those are
before you continue,
Yeah.
I'm like, I love all this, and I really do. I just want to kind of like get your feedback on a couple of things here. Like
Sure.
if you, a lot of things of what you just talked about are stuff that I think like defines an indie game to the core. But
Mhm.
what examples, in your opinion, what are some good examples of
Mm.
those principles in games? Like when you mentioned all those games, I thought of like Vampire Survivors recently, a
Mhm.
game that's very simple. It's not necessarily a AAA polished game in the sense that it's easy on the eyes, but it does have a very cool, unique concept. It feels genuine. It doesn't feel like it's just made just to be a cash grab. You know, it feels
Mhm.
like something that was almost like purely as stupidly simple as possible, and it was just something like that. I don't know the person who made it, but it feels like it was just a passion project that sort of just blew up. And then you
Yeah.
also have the games like Hades, for instance, that do feel like they do have like some kind of like extra polish to it, but it still has that very indie feel when you think about the gameplay of Hades. And then you have like Hollow Knight, which is an absolutely gorgeous game. You have Steam World Dig and in different games like that. In your opinion, what would you consider to be games that are describing what you're talking about right now?
Well, my favorite series is Spelunky. The Spelunky series. I can't help but talk about it, but um, it comes from a place of passion. It was something that Derek Hewitt's creator made just in his spare time for free, right? He just loves putting together game genres. It was very scrappy. It was made all just by the first version was all just by Derek. Second version was made by just 2 people. It's got this kind of like, it feels inexpensive. Is that the right word? Unique. This was, Spelunky was one of the first games to ever combine the 2 genres of roguelike and platformer together. And genuine for sure. Derek is one of these guys who does all the art for his games. On Spelunky 2, he's lead artist, so a lot of other people were helping, but you can see it in the art. Like it's got the Derek unique kind of look and feel to it. That's always my go-to example, but like we are so spoiled these days. There's so many indie games. Hyperlight Drifter is one that probably comes up a lot because it's so pretty, definitely made by passion. You play that game and you're like, it was not made from a cynical place. It was made by people who are really into it and tried as hard as they could to make it look gorgeous. And it's got that scrappy feel. You know what I mean? It feels like it just hit that finish line and nailed it. It doesn't feel like it went $1 million over the finish line or something. You know what I mean? Very unique. To this day, you see screenshots from Hyperlight Drifter and you're like, there it is. And the developers, if you go look up the developers behind the game, you'll find that they are, from what I've seen, very genuine folks who did a great job. Good question though. Like, yeah, a lot of these things we talk about, and they're kind of up in the clouds, and to bring it down with like, what are some actual tangible examples? I really like that a lot. But I'll finish up that good indie game with one final thing, which I think is that this is my last tier for like, if you want a simple answer for what a good indie game is, this I think is something indie game developers would say. A good indie game is one that's able to pay its developers well.
Oh, that's
and
really
sometimes, from the developer's perspective, sometimes you're like, you're on a team and you're like, I was hoping we were going to work on an RTS and we're working on a city builder instead. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it and it'll be cool. And the parts I work on will be really fun or something, right? At the end of the day, it's a good, solid project if you're happy enough working on it and it's able to pay you like a good wage, right? And I think a lot of indie game developers will totally agree with that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that thought. I mean, a lot of people just want to live a good lifestyle and live comfortably. I mean, not everyone wants to be millionaires. Of course, all of us wish we probably could be in some sense of form, but like just that pursuit of happiness, that pursuit of something that is that sense of wealth to where you're happy doing the things that you do and you're comfortable enough to where you don't have to worry about where your next meal is coming from. I think
absolutely.
I completely get that. So that second question though, Matt, like how do you experience an indie game, or how often do you experience an indie game with a standout unique concept?
It's a good question. I think it really depends on where you go find your games, right? Because if you are on itch, you are going to just see more unique games popping up for sure, because there's a lot of more experimental games. The bar is a lot lower. So you'll have people who make a game in the weekend and no one's ever seen anything like this before. Now they only spent, 18 hours on it or something. So it's not the next Skyrim, right? It might not knock your socks off content wise, but you might be like, whoa, I've never seen a mechanic do this before. Or like, wow, a grappling hook mechanic that's got this twist that just blew my mind or something. If you go to itch, and especially like if you look at game jams, those are a great place to check out people being confronted with limitations, which is one of the best tools for the creative person, right? Because you'll see a game jam, like the low res jam. You have to make a game that fits within a 64 by 64 little square. Very challenging, but you will see people who will pack that full of stuff, user interface and text and little characters with animations. The limitations are what kind of squeezes your creativity and really good stuff pops out. So if you're looking for unique game concepts, you will find them on Steam, but a lot of times you'll find that those are the games that have kind of gone through the process and they maybe lean a little less towards unique and a little more towards like a genre staple with like a twist, right? Like a cherry on top instead of a whole brand new different thing that's going to change how you think about games, So it really depends on where you go looking for games.
I agree. Just speaking as someone who plays a lot of the games just for the podcast and such like that, I'm right there with you. I see a lot of games to where I'm like, I think that they have a unique concept, but it's a well-worn concept in the sense that where it's like I've seen aspects of it in other games, but this one just does it in a slightly different manner to where it kind of feels unique, but it's not necessarily like a revolutionary gameplay mechanic, so to speak. Like I played a game called Brooke the Investigator. It's a point and click adventure game, point and click mystery game where you also play as an alligator who's a investigator. And you also have like it's a point and click game. So just it's very simple. You kind of understand it. You can picture in your head. You're going around looking for clues in a very point and click like way. But the game flips itself on the head because like like at different points in the game, you can turns into a beat 'em up. And I don't quite know. I can't remember the last time I've ever seen that combination, if I ever have before. So it's taking two things that I've played a lot of, but it's combining them, and I've never quite seen that combination before. So
Love
I
that.
think that's an aspect to where I'm like, that's unique, but it's unique using well-worn materials,
Yeah.
And that's
And what indie developers are able to do these days is there's all these tools that have the data like SteamDB and VG Insights. And what you can do is you can go look up a genre, right? Say like the point and click like you were talking about, and you look up another genre like the beaten ups you were talking about, right? And then you can look at the data and see if there is an overlap between like, wow, 80% of the fans who like point and click like beat 'em ups. I'm sure that's not what the number is, but you could find whatever that number is. And what that can do is point you in a direction where you could say, hey, fans of this game are going to love this game if I combine these two genres, right? And it can also tell you like, hey, I had this idea for what about a side-scrolling platformer meets chess or something weird like that. You can go look that up and be like, nope, the data's not there. No one's going to want to play that game. I can just not make that game and go to one of my different game ideas. But I love that these days, we didn't used to have that data. We used to have these tools. There didn't used to be that many games on Steam, so we could actually get meaningful data out of it. But these days we can go and check, and we can kind of almost, based on what people are playing, we can almost see what people want to play next based on the data.
So does that data, I will get back to your question a little bit, Mario's, but like, does that data kind of like propel you to want to change your vision of a project to like, you see like at least like 65% of the market loves playing roguelikes, or like 65% loves playing right now Souls games are all the rage right now. Does that data like influence you to where you're like, man, I really have to sort of think about that when I'm creating a game going forward?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's the kind of thing that like a big game studio looks more at, right? Because they've got this huge investment. They're like, look, we're going to spend $100 million on this next game. When you look at the tools and all the cost of salary and hardware and all this stuff, right? And they need to know that the players are going to be there, kind of, right? So they'll do more market research up front. They'll do more vetting of game ideas. Where indies, and this is, I'm generalizing here, this is unfair, but like indies in general will kind of lean more towards like, this is a passion project, or, I think about this a lot. A lot of people create with their gut. They're like, in my gut, I just know people are going to love a game where you're a bat and you fly around, you drop bombs on villages or something like that. You know what I mean? And they just build it, and they just like, they can see it so clearly. They know it's going to be successful. And, you're rolling the dice, right? You don't know for sure. The audience might not be there. It might be a terrible idea, but I have a hard time with this because I think it's a beautiful thing just to be inspired. Like, where do these ideas come from? They just arrive, and when we create these cool things, and that's what gets us out of bed in the morning. And the sad thing is, not all those ideas are great, and not all of them are going to make any money. But I still think it's cool to see these things, these ideas come out of nowhere. And I want to see some of those go all the way to the finish line, even if it's not going to be the most marketable game in the world. You know what I mean? I think there's room around for everything. But yeah, the bottom line is like, if you have a game concept, you can go and check and see. Like, I'm going to be doing this very soon for my game Witchmore. It's called a Steam competitive analysis, but I'll be going and compiling the data from about 100 games that are sort of in the genre, the look and the feel and the quality level of my game. And I can see how those games did, how they performed, what their sales were like in a 6-month or a year-long period or so, compile all that up, compare my game to that game, and then I can kind of get a feel for how my game is going to perform or not, and I can see how much money I'm going to lose. It's going to
be I like that. It's not, like, there is a sort of balance between creativity and analytics and as much as we would like to say, like, we would love to follow our dreams and follow our passions and follow like our gut on what we should make, there is a very real analytical side that most people need to consider in order to be at least marginally successful in game development. And it's one of those things to where like, it's, you know, a necessary evil, to, you know, term it in a very, I guess you say, pessimistic sort of way, but like it's one of those things to where it's just the natural state of like game development and where we're at currently in life, you know.
Yeah. There are some game developers who side very much on the side of like, look, you need to make a living. And
Mhm.
they exist there happily because there is always room in the marketable, you know, space of like, this game's going to make money. There's room in there to be super creative and to make everybody happy. There always is. There's some concept that's going to make every developer happy and make them money. They just don't know what it is, right? They just can't find something. And that's a struggle. I struggle with that myself a lot because I'm the kind of person who like, I kind of get more inspired and I'm like, I want to make what I want to make, you know,
Mhm.
regardless of whether or not there's going to be a market for it. But like, I can't afford to do that. I am not a wealthy person. I have bills to pay. I've got hungry dogs to feed, you know, like I need to go and see if there's actually going to be an audience there. So I'm somewhere in the middle, but these days I'm leaning a little more towards the marketing side just because I'm leaning more on the business stuff and I kind of have to. But I'm keeping the creativity in there. Like games you see from me are hand drawn. Like I draw everything myself, and it's all characters that come out of my brain. It's like icky, undead, gross, bloody bone monsters crawling out of the woods. Like I still get to kind of scratch my itch, but at the same time, I have a little more hope that the game could actually pay for its development. You know?
Yeah, I get that completely. So, and this is kind of like advice you give a lot of people in the book as well, you know, like as far as like the mindset that you need to have while creating a game, and the creativity meets the realism of like the world we live in as well. So, everyone, he created a book, by the way, and the book is called
I love this. How to make a video game all by yourself. Please do check it out. You know, it's paperback, right? Like
Yeah.
it's how cool is that? It's this cute little orange book. It's only 200 pages. It's like $15, you know. Get some pocket change. Throw it at Amazon. Get yourself a cute little book and help me pay my bills.
It's so small, man. It's so small. You can legitimately, you don't have any space that it takes up in your luggage if you're traveling and everything like that. You just want to read up while you're on a plane.
That's right.
Perfect little size for that. So everyone,
Absolutely.
just go check out this book. It's amazing.
I love
So
this.
I gotta cue you up. I gotta cue.
Perfect. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. You're my wingman. This is awesome.
Oh, for sure, for sure. But let's pivot into some back to Mario's question a little bit. I want to talk to you about the next phase of his questions, because he said with the volume of indies coming out, how do you create a unique concept to stand out? And I think that's an interesting question. I mean, a lot of people do create with their gut. So they initially have like a dream or they have a thought and they're like, this is it. And then there's other people that do market research, like you're referring to. And then there's people who kind of like start something and then that game becomes a completely different thing, like months and years after development. What do you think that process is like?
Yeah. So it's about indie games wanting to stick out,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So there's various ways to do that. And one of the ways I like to start is with how not to do that, because we see so many examples of this, right? Hundreds of indie games are coming out where they're just like, you know, when it boils down right down to it, it's like it's Castlevania, or look,
Hmm.
it's Mega Man, and like, what is it that's different about this game? And it's like, this one has swords. And you're like, right? Like that's not going
Hmm.
to cut it. You know what I mean? Oh, this one has procedurally generated worlds or maps or whatever. Okay, that was cool 10 or 20 years ago. Like that's no longer unique, right? So there's various approaches you can take to help your game stand out. One way is like a mashup. We kind of talked about this already, like the two genres, right?
Hmm.
Deck builders are very popular right now, and from the what I'm seeing from marketing, game dev marketing, Twitter, and stuff like that, deck builders are very profitable at the moment. And what's interesting about deck builders is they haven't thoroughly been saturated yet, really. So like deck builders are ripe for like, has there been a deck builder RTS? I don't know. Has there been a deck builder chess game, a deck builder turn-based strategy, a deck builder fighting game? I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there for mashups. Another way is like a genre twist. Say like You're the Villain is a popular one. Common thing when like, you know, you're always the good person. You're going to go
Hmm.
save the castle. Right now, you're going to go destroy the castle. One of my personal favorites. This is a really untapped approach to making your game stand out. Is I call it the animal fantasy. And so the animal fantasy we first saw. I mean, we've been seeing it for a long time, but some recent popular games. Goat Simulator is a great one. Untitled Goose Game. There's one where you play as a loaf of bread. Like, it doesn't even have to be an animal fantasy, but like the sky's the limit for like, is there a game where you can just play as a butterfly and go and, you know, do whatever butterflies do? Is there a game where you're a bee and your job is just to pollinate flowers and come back and build your little hive and stuff? Like, there was a game called Webbed, huge hit of an indie game, and you're just a cute little spider. That's kind of the whole concept of the game. Webbed. It's a side-scrolling platformer, pixelated graphics, and you just you shoot your cute little spider around, and you there's plenty of room right now for like almost pick an animal. Is there a game? Penguin Simulator. I could go down the list. That's all the thousands of the entire animal kingdom. Unscratched surface. Pick an animal and be like this. Oh, what was the one? What was the cat one?
Stray. Oh, Stray.
Stray. Huge hit of a game. Literally, the game is you're a cat. You don't even have to try to find a game hook that'll stick out and like people were like, excuse me, you're a cat. That came out of the woodwork. Everybody bought that game. Okay. Another one is specificity. I love this one. Very specific things. We're getting enough games in the world now that, you know, it's no longer enough to be like, it's a World War II shooter. No, we need to get more specific. I want to see like you're a World War II chimney sweep or something like that. Specificity. You're not just making pottery. You're making like, this is a mug, like a pottery mug game. All you're doing is making mugs. Power washing. There was a power wash simulator.
You got it right there. Power wash simulator.
Hit game, right? And it's just, I mean, what a no-brainer. What a satisfying. Like my wife and I watch TV shows, and they're doing the power washing to like blast the rust off of an old car or something, and we're like, yeah, I want to do that. It looks so satisfying, you know. That's a big one. And then I'll end this list up with how to make your game stand out. My personal favorite. I don't get to play with this one enough, but I want to. Scale. Scale is my personal favorite one because, okay, you and I, we're talking, we're having a nice normal chat, right? If I was suddenly 10 feet tall, you would want to address that, right?
Oh, instantly. I'd have so many questions. I'd have so many questions. How did you get 10 feet tall? How long have you been a giant? Hey, can you shrink back down? I'm like,
great questions.
Is it the movie giant to where like the movie type of giant to where like when you get big, you for some dumb reason you still slow down and move at like 1/4 speed? I'd have so many questions for you. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, right? Yeah, and that's not even that much scale. What if I was 100 feet tall? What if there were 1,000 of me in this room right now? What if I were an inch tall? And this scale, what if your room was 100 times bigger? What if guns were 3 times as large? What if everybody had giant swords? You know what I mean? Like scale is something. And what I love about these little mashup and the genre twist and the animal fantasy, you can go almost to any game that like you can go pick up one of your favorite games, Borderlands, but you're riding a pterodactyl. That's off the top of my head. I want to play that right now. You know what I mean? You take any game. Yeah. Twist the scale, twist the animal fantasy, twist some specificity or something. You got a unique brand new game. Sky's the limit.
I checked that out. Like, no kidding. I checked that out. I was like, I was just thinking about that. I'm like, I'd play that. At least give it at least an hour or two.
Absolutely. Yeah. The latest Mario game, but you're Godzilla sized. I'd play that. You want to crush your city as Mario? Yeah. Now I do. I didn't even know that was a thing a second ago. But now I want to play that.
Yeah. I'm down for that. Like, I recently went to PAX East, and there are a lot of games there that I didn't necessarily know existed. And a lot of those are just like you talked about. They're games that have a unique concept. They scale appropriately, or like they just do something that's very weird enough to where you're like, I've never played anything like that. Or like, I played one where it is basically it's Castlevania, except you're playing as Dracula, but like the whole premise of the game is like, instead of you trying to beat the bosses, you're getting to the bosses who have put a whole bunch of obstacles in front of you in order to see if you're worthy of dating them.
Oh, I love it.
Love it. I've never seen anything quite like it. And I was just like, it's such a unique concept to where like it takes something that's a well-known aspect and it just flips it on its head and makes it it's basically Castlevania meets The Bachelor in a sense. And I'm like, I'm right there with it. And it fits. It's like vampires have always been like glorified sexual kind of creatures in mythology and such like that. So it's like it fits 1v1, and it makes you think to yourself, I'm like, why hasn't anyone thought of this before? You know?
Oh, those are the best ideas. There, you came up right there. That's the bar. That's the bar. And like sometimes you go and you check and you're like, oh, there's 3 games like this already. And you got to do your research or whatever. But you're right. That's the bar right there. If you're like, okay, it sounds fun, I want to play it, this is genius, and no one's ever made it before, there's your game.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's unique. That's your measurement to see if it's a good idea or not. I love that.
It really is, because I'm like, I was walking by it, and I was just like, oh, it's kind of like Persona, where you're kind of like talking and you're kind of like trying to figure out someone's love languages or like their interests and such like that. And then it just like 2 more minutes later, they were back to fighting in a Castlevania like environment. I was like, oh, that's not Persona at all. I was like, wait, is this Persona meets like Castlevania? Oh, sign me up for this. Like,
yes.
Yeah. And I'm like,
I'm adding that to my list.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I'm adding, okay, romance. That's a whole nother, and what I love about these like, again, the romance, you could apply that to any game. Mario Brothers, but with romance. Like, like, oh, you go and you save Peach or the princess or whatever at the end, right? What if that was just the beginning of the game?
Yeah,
you didn't save me fast enough. I'm not dating you. And you're like, oh man, I gotta go save someone else now or something, right? Yeah, genius. I love that. Just boyfriend dungeon. Boyfriend dungeon. For sure. You might think about a lot, right? Because it has that same kind of you're dating your weapons, and it's like we're just taking a dungeon crawler. You've played Diablo. Pick your favorite dungeon crawler. It's that, but your sword is like a hot person that you want to date. It's such a funny, unique. Like, I'll never forget Boyfriend Dungeon. I don't think I've even played it. Matt, come on. I don't think I have, but I will do it someday. I'll never forget the game. I'll keep talking about it. I'm a fan in that way. I keep telling everybody about it because it's such a unique hook.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I played like tons of games like that at PAX, to where I'm like, oh, I've never quite seen that before. Like, someone did Mario, like the Mario like the sports games, and they just put it in a hockey setting, something I had never seen before. And they just like, they took all the same concepts of a Mario game, put it in a hockey setting, and they added a story mode that evolves as your like player sorts of like, so it's an RPG in the sense to where you can customize what your player's abilities are going to be. So like, you have to be mentored by someone to gain the fire ability or like the ice ability. And I'm like,
oh, cool.
I was just like, but it still has that pick up and playness of a Mario kind of sports game, like just like Mario Strikers or Mario Golf, Yeah. And I was just like, oh, that's different. I like that. RPG meets a Mario sports game.
We are solving problems right here. I'm adding another one here. Sports. I saw a game. It was like Golf Story, I want to say it was.
Good. It is
really
good.
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to play it yet. But you can maybe tell me about it. Is this right? Where it's like an overworld you can explore almost like an action RPG, but instead of ever going into combat, you go into play golf. Is that right?
You nailed it. That's the whole premise entirely, basically. Yeah, it is
amazing.
And it's simple, fun, simple, stupid, like just a concept that everyone you thought would have like done millions and millions of times by now. And I can't think of like 3 games like it on the market right now. And it's fun. It's just, they nailed the mechanics. The golfing feels good. It doesn't look like the best golf game in the world, but right now, no golf game really looks like pristine anyway. So it's one of those things to where I'm like, that is a concept that I can get behind. And they have another game called Sports Story that wasn't quite as good as Golf Story, but Golf Story is really good though.
Was Sports Story like a bunch of different sports mixed up into that? Ah, interesting. Like maybe it was stretched too thin, like too many sports, none of them were really concentrated on, and that good?
Yeah. What's the restaurant where like what is that restaurant where they do a whole bunch of different genres? The Cheesecake Factory. It is very much yeah. Yes,
it's the biggest menu you ever see in your life.
Exactly. It was like the Cheesecake Factory of like indie sports games, kind of. Yeah. That's basically how it is.
Like, you'll never decide. It's like, what do you want? You want Chinese or pizza, or do you want tacos, or just a giant cheesecake? Like, they have pretty much anything you can imagine. You're like, well, I gotta read, like, I need my reading glasses and give me half an hour to read this book.
Exactly. And then when I'm at the Cheesecake Factory, like the very few times that I go, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, how often does a cook prepare this one meal? Like, does he get this like maybe once every 2 months or so? If so, is it going to be really good if he hasn't prepared it for a long time? You know what I mean? I'm
like, they're like, what they order? I've never heard of that. We sell that?
Yeah.
I don't know how to make that.
Exactly. So he's over there scrolling through his phone and such like that, trying to remember the recipe for that particular item. So no, it's like Sports Story feels like that. And it's not to throw shade on that game, at least too much shade on it, but like that's the way it feels compared to like Golf Story, where it's a very narrowed focus game to where like they took something and like they had a vision, took something and made it extremely well polished. And they were like, it feels good. And it feels like a real golf game. So
I love
I
that.
would definitely, call that one of those games to where I'm like, I can definitely see if someone took aspects of Sports Story and made it into like a roguelike, I'm like, sign me up for it. That's something I'm there day one for.
There's an indie developer listening right now taking notes.
Yeah, exactly.
You might in a few years you might see that game pop up, and it would probably do very well. I love that tweak. I think that's the great lesson is it doesn't take a huge tweak. It's just like, if it's all sports, here's an example where that's maybe too much. Like your unique concept to make your game stick out can be very simple. It can just be golf. It doesn't have to be like football and sports and everything.
No.
Like simple, and there's like combining things that people already like. I love that, right? It's almost like another scoop of ice cream on top of your ice cream cone. Like, and it's a scoop of flavor that you like. So it's not something like, oh, why'd you put that on there? It's this great like combination that makes the whole better, than the part.
Like swirl, basically.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I love that. This is great. Fantastic.
Yeah. So like on the flip side of though, there is a level of familiarity with when you as a developer, and I'm guessing because I've never developed a game, but like you as a player, when you encounter a game that feels very much like a game you played before, but it has just a unique twist enough to where it feels like a different concept, but it's so familiar to where when you describe it, you can say like, oh, this is like this game, but with this little twist, but it's still very much like a light version of that game. And you see games like that have success still, like there's a balance, I guess, or there's like a weird like formula to where when you get something exactly right, even though it's quote unquote, and I'm being like, loose with this term, but like, even though it feels like a copy, it still has success,
Yeah, you're exactly right. What's happened is like back in the day, it used to be you could kind of make almost any kind of a game because most everything was new because there weren't that many games, right? These days, that's less true. And there's also basically the discovery queue and the way people find games. It was really inevitable, but it has impacted the way people design games. And so say you find a hit game like Cult of the Lamb. You go to Steam store page, the game's made $60 million or something. And a lot of people have played it to death and they're ready for the next thing, right? So you go down and there's that little widget, more like this. That is money. If you're talking about a hit game like a Call of Duty or an Undertale or a Minecraft or something, that little piece of web page, that little real estate there, I wish you could see the dollar signs flying out of that widget, right? And if you make a game where you're like, okay, it's not really like Minecraft. It's like it's a whole different thing. Yeah, it's got some similarities with Minecraft, but I don't like to talk about that. I like to talk about other stuff. And so you lose that connection because if you go to the Minecraft's page, you go to the bottom and you see your game in that list. Like the closer you are to Minecraft, you kind of bathe in its warmth. You know what I mean? Another analogy I like to use is, you got this giant whale swimming by and you get those little fish, those little sucker fish that stick to the bottom of a big shark or something, and they just feed off the little niblets. That is a completely legit, that is the business strategy for a lot of indie game developers where they're like, there was this huge mammoth hit of a game. We're going to come in after it and we're going to make a game that's kind of similar. And that's the thing. You're completely right about the balance. Like if it's too similar, players are like, why would I buy that? I've already got Undertale. This is basically you just ripped off Undertale. Like, I saw one game where it was like Cuphead, but worse. That's an inevitable thing. Like if you're trying, like, okay, yeah, there's not that many games that have that gorgeous, heavily animated, beautiful art style, with the rubber arms and that classic look and feel. So yeah, it kind of feels like there's a big gap in the market, and maybe there is. But when you chase Cuphead is such a bar. It's such a huge, like you're gonna like, oh, and you're gonna like not hit it. You know what I mean? And some people might be like, hey, this is just Cuphead, but worse kind of thing. Like you gotta be different. You gotta change enough to be memorable. You like the theme, you got to change of the things we talked about, change the scale, add sports or specificity or something, right? So yeah, it's this tightrope you got to walk. If it's too similar, players hate that and they won't want to buy it. And if it's too different, then you won't make it into that like Steam won't compare it, and people who talk about the game won't be like, oh, you just finished Dead Cells, well, you got to check out, bam, like that's where you want your game to be. You don't want it to be like, oh, well, this game's like Dead Cells, but I don't know if you'd like it because it's a little too different.
Yeah.
That took me a while to realize, is that like what the Steam player is looking for is really not more of the same, but a little bit. They want like more of the same but different. They really do want that 10-20% different, and they want to like march down those games to find something completely new someday. But like Steam players know what they like and they know what they want to buy.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And a good example of this, like for me personally, I was playing a game called Doom to Hell. And Doom to Hell, to give you the general pitch, is imagine Hades. And you hear Hades, you're one guy, you're battling out of all these procedurally generated dungeons, and you have random powers, and you're trying to work your way out of hell. That's the whole entire premise of that game. Sure, you have nuanced characters, you have gorgeous music, you have gorgeous art style, but Doom to Hell is that exact same game, the exact same storyline, except instead of like having a whole bunch of characters, you just have one character who's trying to get out of hell because hell is overfilled, and the devil has given you a pass to where, like, if you can make it to the end of everything, you get a one-way trip back to Earth. That's the only real like change there. But the difference of this game is, like, instead of it playing like Hades, it is a twin stick shooter. And instead of you getting like these power-ups like that are very much like Greek god power-ups, where you have lightning, where you have like winter abilities, or whether you have like Poseidon's abilities to manipulate water or anything like that. You have guns and you have knives. So it's almost like someone's playing Hades, went out and watched John Wick at the movies and said, you know what, I'm combining those two things. And that's exactly what they did. And I played this game for a weekend and 3 days. So like half a week was spent playing this game because it was just Hades enough to feel that itch of like, I want to play Hades again. I love Hades. That's comfort food for me. But it was just comfortable enough to where I enjoyed playing it, but it was just a little bit of a twist enough to where like I was just like, why don't I just go play Hades at this point? And I think that's that kind of sweet spot we were talking about just now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that game sounds like a bullseye for you. And you might not remember, I don't know, like who knows anymore, but like that game might, like, if you remember how it entered your radar, like,
yeah,
it might have been through Hades. Like you play a lot of Hades and Steam might have been like, whoop, hey, and like that's how, right? Like it's the way they get us.
Yeah, for sure. And it is a crazy thing because, like, if that game sort of found its audience and was able to, like you said, kind of like pick off the little guppies like me who like found it through the discovery of like the spear of recommended games, so to speak, then it could feast on its own right. Sure, it's never going to be Hades. Sure, it's never going to reach that millions and millions of dollars that Hades got. But if it can just get just enough to where it's like a successful, profitable game to where it made the development cycle worth it, then it's a success,
Absolutely. That makes it a good indie game.
Yeah, exactly. A very good indie game indeed. A very good indie game indeed. So, like, you're creating a game right now. Like, how much of all this are you taking into account in creating Witchmore?
Great question. This stuff has hit me really heavily with Witchmore. I completely have kind of aligned my interest in the game with what I think the market will be reacting to. So an early version of the game, I was kind of using what's called an anchor game, which is what we've been talking about is like, talk about game A leads you to game B, right? So like you were saying, this game is like Hades, Doomed to Die or something. So that's the anchor game. So Hades would be the anchor game. I was talking about Animal Crossing just because like I was picturing a little village where there's people, and like as a witch, I wanted you to be able to like steal from them and curse their objects and like curse them with black magic, basically. Like, a witch, a movie you always hear they like steal, what is it? You have to steal something they own, and then you can use that to create like a little like a hex or something. Anyway, like witchcraft stuff, right? I still am going to have that stuff in the game, but using Animal Crossing as the anchor game was the wrong call, because Animal Crossing is all these things that Witchmore isn't going to be. It's got like people you can talk to with lots of dialogue, lots of characterization, and it's really mostly about customization. And it's also a very passive, non-violent game, and that's not what I'm making. And so I was looking at my gameplay. It was more of like there's an overworld, and yeah, there's some characters moving around and stuff, but it's more like you're just a creepy witch in the woods, and it's mostly the animals and creatures and stuff. And the way I was building it out was kind of like Sports Story, where you were talking about, where it's like this overworld action RPG situation, and then there's these kind of grottos you can go into, and instead of them being sports or something, the grottos were basically roguelike dungeons, something along the lines of like Discount Hades, like the best version that I could make just by myself, which would be a very, minimal version of that. But, roguelike combat, shooting fireballs at enemies and wandering around a maze, the kind of games I've made before. And a combination of things happened. One, as I realized that was a big, big game for me to make by myself. I've made that kind of game before. It's going to take me months and months. And then two, the bullet hell genre was kind of becoming viable. And I think it currently is. I need to do more research, but there's a lot of bullet hell or bullet heaven or action casual arena games or whatever you want to call them. I think I'm gravitating towards bullet heaven, but Vampire Survivors, Brotato, 20 Minutes Till Dawn. A lot of these Soul Survivors, I think, is one of them. Basically, it's just, a lot of high intensity combat in like a one room arena situation. And so that's what I'm leaning into with Witchmore. And so the way I got there was market analysis, reducing my scope, but also scratching my itch, because that's the kind of combat I really like. I didn't put myself in a place where I was like, maybe I landed on golf, right? I was like, hey, Golf Story is making a bunch of money, like witchcraft golf. I don't know. Like that could be a really cool hook. So maybe I make that. But then I would have landed in a place where I'm like, oh yeah, I don't really like golf, so this is going to be hard for me to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I put it in a place where like I really like arena combat. I love drawing creepy monsters, and I like just fighting monsters and stuff. So it puts me in a good place in that way. And I am trying to pay attention to the market and see if the game can actually be profitable. Because one of my goals is to make someday make a completely profitable game, no strings attached.
In the same sense we were talking about, like, the gulpies sort of leeching off of like the I guess you say the minutia that the whale has like drawn up, so to speak. Like if someone was to look at your game and look at the concepts of how they can twist like aspects of your game, they would be like, I can take the things that he's doing right now, and then I can add like, hey, there's a portion of the game to where like the witch has a layer, and that layer can become under attack by like the villagers that she's like cursed. Then it becomes a tower defense game, and like the witch has to like set different traps and different things like that, to where like maybe she has like a bit upgrade abilities to where she can like do possessions, ghouls, different types of things like that. It's just a little feedback, by the way, just a little.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
And it's something that feels like smaller scope still, that still sounds witchy, that you get what I mean?
I do. Yeah. A couple of the games I'm looking at, not just for inspiration, but just for comparison and stuff, is so Brotato, and then another one is Bone Razor Minions. And the reason I think about those games is Brotato has a real similar play style and art style. And then Bone Razor Minions, the art style is almost nothing like mine. It's very retro, classic arcade inspired. But my gameplay is very much like I was saying earlier, you get your animal friends to fight with you. And it's a little RTSC, like you were saying, what I could though, like as you were talking, I got this vision for like, maybe the witch could put down little witchy totems, like you were suggesting.
Oh yeah.
To go along with the cats. The cats and the pets are meant to be like, they come with you, like they come into the combat, but they also go home with you, right? But yeah, there could totally be a weapon where you drop a totem in the arena, and then it like, it would persist. They wouldn't come home with you.
Yeah.
It wouldn't follow you home or something. But yeah, that's what I love about this this kind of pivot towards the arena gameplay, is there's like the lion's share of my ideas that I had for the roguelike stuff fits into that arena shape, but just in like a simpler form, which is fantastic. Brotato is a little bit known for having that sort of kind of tower-based gameplay you were talking about, because I haven't done this, but I've heard there's a build where as you're playing through Brotato, you get nothing, but the little tower power-ups, turrets. You put these turrets down, and the turrets like shoot monsters for you, and like you yourself are maybe very weak, but you just stay near your turrets and just kind of dodge.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And that's the kind of gameplay I'm hoping to get in Witchmore, where there's like different builds. Like maybe you can, this time I was a fire witch, and next time you're like, it was this build was very geared towards my cats, where my cats got really powerful, or this is a lightning build or something like that. But yeah, I love that kind of thing where within one genre you play with another. Maybe there's even a golf mini game inside Witchmore.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like, you can take like since it's a witch theme, you can take like since you have like animals, she can have like a leech that she throws on like the bodies of like her like the victims and such like that, and they become allies, like AIs that go around and protect her as well. I'm like, so many things you can do with this concept. It's really cool.
I'm
It's
loving that.
that's a really cool concept you've come up with.
I
But
appreciate
I'm
it.
not trying to like, this wasn't supposed to be like a whole like pitching seminar. I apologize for that.
No, I
But
love it. This is great.
yeah, but Matt, I got one last question about like Mario's questions, so to speak. Like we kind of answered all of his questions here, but like he also wrote in and said, if you were starting from scratch and you were like trying to figure out a budget, so to speak, like just from you personally, how would you go about it? And I thought to myself, I'm like, I can ask Matt, but Matt also has a personal reference that he can also, reach for just right
Oh,
there.
do you mean how to make a video game all by yourself out now
Eh,
on paperback and ebooks
Exactly.
with a
And
low
that's
price of
probably going to have all
$9.99?
the answers that the Mario needs right there.
This is great, man. I wish everybody brought up my book as much as you do. It's fantastic. A plus. So is it how do you come up with a budget?
Yeah, how do you budget and I guess you mentioned that with your scale and such like that, like when you were thinking about like how you have to scale up and down when games like that, but he
Yeah.
was mentioning like how do you come up with an actual budget when you're starting a project?
Yeah. Great question. So you got to think about kind of the mechanics of your budget, right? Because I think with a lot of people, I talk to a wide range of developers, ranging from like, I'm a hobbyist who just started and I kind of want to make my first game, of course, all the way to like, no, I'm a AAA developer. I've been making games for 20 years and I want to make a little side project that I'm hoping will make like 50 grand or something in a year, right? So those are very different budgeting requirements. You know what I mean? When you look at the AAA scale, or like if you're wanting to mostly outsource your development, hire developers, hire artists, hire professionals to do the work, right? The number changes and it needs to be looked up pretty often, but a reasonable place to start is about $10,000 per person per month.
Okay.
Per person per month. So if you do the math, that's $120,000 per person per year. So
Okay.
it really adds up. And if you're talking about, 3 people in 3 months, you can do the math. It's quite a bit of money.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the budgeting where you look at your own personal time, which is like when you're paying yourself, it would be great to pay yourself that much, but probably you're paying yourself $0, which is what I pay myself right now. Zilch. And then you have a much, you have more budget to work with. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You can suddenly be like, if you're doing it full time, you've got your 8 hours or whatever. If you're doing it part time, you can be like, okay, I can squeeze in Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I've got an hour. Sundays, I've got 5 hours. Whatever that is. You start to budget that stuff out. So really the way to look at it is kind of first you compile your resources. You've got, we all have certain resources. We all have time. We all have energy. We all have some amount of money, whether it's $1 or $1 million, whatever it is, right? We all have these things. So I think a good place to start with the budget is write all that down, right? Then give yourself, we're all of us constrained to space time. We all live in the universe and none of us have infinite time. There's no one on the planet living right now who has 500 years to live. So you got to think about how long do you want it to go before you have something to show for it? And if it's your very first game, I urge you to give it a week or a month at most. Like just dump something out. Like join a game jam, 3 days, just bang something out. It's fine. Good place to start. If you're wanting to amp it up more, you might want to give yourself a month. My friend Krister McFunky Pants on Twitter used to run this thing, onegameamonth.com, where every single month you crank out a game. That's a really reasonable amount of time to make a little something. I think 3 months is a pretty good amount of time to give something to really hit it hard and actually invest some money into it. When looking at things to actually spend money on, the advice that I've seen is there's no better investment than your Steam capsule.
Mm-hmm.
So hire an artist. It might be $500, it might be $2,000, whatever makes sense for you, whatever you can afford, and whatever artist, and really, you got to work with the person to get there. But we're talking about a, relatively significant investment depending on your budget and stuff. But more people will see your capsule than any other part of your game. Like as you're scrolling through Steam, you just see capsule, right? And if your capsule's good enough, hey, people might click on it, right? That's the one thing I've seen where it's like that's worth hundreds of dollars, like cash investment. Second would be trailer, but fewer people see it, and it's also usually more expensive from my limited experience. So budgeting is really hard. I would, for people just beginning, I would start really simple and just give yourself like, look, I'm going to spend an hour a day on this and try to crank something out and just ship something. Just ship a little game you can send to a friend, and they can jump up and down and they can shoot a monster or climb a fence or just do the whatever one thing you make your game about. Just make something real simple. And then if you're starting to take it seriously, I still wouldn't spend money until you have to.
That's good.
Like have to. But great question. Budgeting is always really hard, because the resources are just they're so tight. You know? They're so tight. Nobody has infinite money. Nobody has infinite time. Even those of us who have the most of those things.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Matt, before we go though, I have one question for you. What have you been playing lately?
What have I been playing lately? I was afraid you were going to ask me this because I've been playing very little, and I keep my mic. I have been playing a lot of Beat Saber, which I think is really fun. I go through a lot of the classics, but I also buy some of the packs.
What's the songs you've been Beat Sabering to?
There's a League of Legends song that I'm not a League player, but it says League of Legends right there in there. I can hear it in my head. I know some K-pop. No, I don't know. Anyway, the songs the game comes with are the ones I play the most. I also like I like Billie Eilish. I like Lady Gaga. It's pretty limited. I mean, there's not a lot of artists. There's like 10 artists up there, so like it's pretty slim pickings. But I think it's a great game. I almost always sweat when I play it. You know, it's something that gets my muscles moving. On the VR train, we're also playing Demio, which is a really cool board game where like you're in a basement with friends and you all gather around this board game and you roll the dice and you fight monsters and stuff. That's really fun. I'm always playing Spelunky too, just every now and then because I can't put it down because it's my favorite game of all time. I'm really looking forward to, I took some notes because I felt like I might ask something like this. I'm looking forward to the Axis Unseen. Which is a really cool indie game made by a developer who worked on Bethesda. They worked at Bethesda working on, I think, Skyrim and Fallout.
Okay.
And it speaks my language because it's like a big open world where you've got a bow and arrow and you sneak around and shoot stuff. And I'm like, yeah. And
that sounds really cool. Is it 3D or 2D?
3D. First person shooter. What really interests me about it is it has a diegetic interface, which means that the information about the game you would normally get in a HUD or user interface, like a hit point bar in the corner, those things are represented in the game world. And so your health, you know, in a first person shooter, you can kind of see your hand sometimes in front of you. Your health is tattooed in the back of your hand and it changes.
Oh, that's so cool.
Changes. Yeah. I eat that stuff up with a spoon. I love it. Like in Dead Space, your health bar was your spinal cord. It was a third person game where you could see the back of your character, Isaac, and your health bar would deplete as your your spinal cord would represent that. I love that kind of stuff. So that's a game I'm looking forward to. A game that's out right now. I'm looking forward to playing. I gotta play more games, man. You know what it is? I keep myself too busy. I'm always doing like marketing, podcasting, content stuff. Like I'm working on Witchmore. I promote my book constantly. I gotta find more time to sit down. I've been wanting to play Rain World. It looks really cool. I was following it a little bit when it first came out. I feel like it kind of got lost in the mix because of games like Hollow Knight were such big hits, but Rain World I've watched a bunch of videos about it. It sounds like a really special game. I want to give it a shot.
Oh, that sounds really cool. I'll have to check out Rain World because I haven't checked that one out. But
it's you are a cat slug in a brutal
cat
simulation.
Slug.
Yeah, everything wants to eat you. You're at the bottom of the food chain, and the gameplay is all like the animation is procedural, and the creatures have really interesting artificial intelligence and I'm sold. I mean, that sounds cool to me.
That sounds really cool. I've never seen a cat slug, but I'm down to give it a try. Cat slug.
I'm down. Yeah.
Yeah. Is the body more slug or is it more cat?
I think that I would say the head and upper body is more cat, and then the body is sluggy. And I think they did that because like when you'll jump like onto a rope or a platform, and your slug body kind of like
the oozes around it.
Yeah, it's got some cool physics.
I like that.
Since I don't have a great answer, what about you? What have you been playing?
Too much.
That's a better answer than mine.
No. I've been playing a ridiculous amount. Like at PAX, I got to play a whole lot of cool games. I played a lot of that, and I've been playing a indie game by the name of Carino Origins. It is a very much like it feels like a throwback SNES type of game, to where like you're playing as a character who is kind of going through like a Castlevania like level. It has very similar bosses to kind of like very Castlevania-esque bosses, but like it's an action platformer. It has, I think, around 10 levels or so. I think I've made it through like 3 of them. But
Mm.
like really fun game. I've been playing it on the Switch. Have a Nice Death is a game very much like Death's Door. That looks very intriguing. I'll fully dive into that. I've been playing a little bit of, what else have I been playing, Sebastian? Put out your have a what else you been playing list, Sebastian? Arcane Bell. It is a 2D Skyrim, so to speak. And
Mm.
yeah, I've never actually seen that concept before, where like I've seen a whole lot of 2D RPGs, but like this is a game almost where you can go anywhere you want, do anything you want. It's just kind of like you're trying to level up your different aspects of your character. So like if you keep using like a sword, you level up your ability as a sword. If you keep
Mm.
using your axe, whether it be to chop down things or whether it be like on your enemies, you like get better as an axeman. So it has really cool like Skyrim systems in a 2D kind of atmosphere, and it's a game that kind of sticks with me. It's like
Hmm.
it's becoming one of my comfort food games. So I'm like,
Comfort food game. I
yeah,
like that a
I'm
lot.
liking that. I'm liking that. The story is not gonna blow anyone away, but it's like an action RPG hack and slash game that kind of like I keep coming back to. And then I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but like Doom to Hell is that Hades clone that is very much like been vibing with me lately.
I'm gonna have to check that out. Oh, my Steam wish list
Yeah.
getting out of control.
Yeah,
There's like
I
a
bet
hundred
it
things on
has.
this now. I'm like, I'm never gonna catch up, but I got to do it.
I
I
bet
got
it
to play
has.
these.
What's the next game you're gonna play for market research?
Great question. So it's probably gonna be one of these Bullet Heaven games, which I actually have my spreadsheet up here. So I can answer that. For research purposes, it has so far been 20 Minutes Till Dawn,
Okay.
Brotato, Vampire Survivors, Bone Razor
Mhm.
Minions. I think I might need to play one that's new to my list. I've got a list right now. It's about 80 strong. And I bet like I made this list. This was everything I could find that was kind of within the genre, sort of on
Yeah,
Steam.
that you want it. Mhm.
Yeah, and there was about 80 games, and that was in November. Can't believe it's been that long. I seriously thought it was like a month ago I made this thing. But it's like, so that was what, 4 months? Oh, come on. It was 4 months ago. So the data is way out. I got to refresh the data. There's like what'll be interesting to see is how many more than 80 are there now. I think
Mhm.
there's probably hundreds. And by the time my game won't launch for another 6 months, man. Like I'm a little worried that the research I do now will be like hideously outdated. Um, but I think I'm gonna play something like Tiny Rogues, perhaps.
That sounds fun.
Runic Survivor, maybe. I'd need to play Soul Survivors or sorry, Soul Stone Survivors. Okay, okay, I didn't know
Mm.
there's two. Oh, really? Are there two? I even found one. I'm not gonna play these, but Zombie Survivors. There's two games on Steam called Zombie Survivors. I'm like, of course there are. But yeah, I got a lot of research to do.
That's always fun. That's always fun. Stressful, but fun.
Stressful but fun. Yeah, it'll be very sobering to see what the game is going to cost to make versus like, is it gonna like I don't have that market reason. My next game, I'm not going to commit as fully to it
Mhm.
until I know that the market has been proven, and then I will, develop it
I like that.
more
I like
thoroughly.
that.
But
So
this one, I'm all
Matt,
in.
before we go, I got one last question for you, and that is, what like movie or TV show recommendation are you gonna give to the audience today?
My wife and I really like watching reality competition TV shows because we really just like we like to watch people do things really well, especially when they're creative.
Mhm.
Like we watch cooking shows and fashion shows and stuff. And we just finished a show called Glow Up, which is a makeup
Oh.
competition show. It's so outside of the normal wheelhouse of things I would usually watch on my own, but that's one of the things I love about hanging out with my wife is she introduces me to cool things, and it's so creative. And the judges they have so much charisma. They say things like, oh, I forget her name. I'm sorry. But one of the judges, whenever she sees a makeup job that she
Mhm.
likes, like a makeup competition, she'll go, ding dong. That's a ding dong, darling. And it's so funny, man. It's so funny.
Matt, like I'm not gonna ask for a whole lot of monetary like value, but I have an idea for a game,
Okay.
and we are mentioning simple things. How many reality TV show based games are there
Oh,
right now?
wow. Yeah. I
I
bet
was
there's very
like
few.
a makeup like or a cooking competition kind of game. It's just like
Great
that.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet cooking is the closest you could get because I would say there's a fair amount of games that are about cooking, like
Oh,
Cook
for
Serve
sure. Like
Delicious,
overcooked and stuff like that.
Overcooked.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they even like they cross genres. They're like
Hmm.
Overcooked is kind of more of an action. It was almost like an action RPG. You're running around, you
Yeah.
got like timing based, whereas some games are more like first person perspective. You're in the kitchen, you might not even see your hands, you just see like magic
Hmm.
knife icons appear or something.
That could be a
But it's a
VR game.
could totally be a VR game. Yeah, I'm a big fan of competition shows like that, and
Hmm.
my wife and I kind of dissect the game design. Like we'll talk your ear off about like which game shows are really well designed and
Hmm.
which ones were like that's a terrible game design. Like that show should not exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's a good point. Yeah, lots of rooms for shows like that. How much would a Twitch streamer love that? Right, a show that
Oh,
can
for sure.
play like competition show that can play with their viewers or something.
Audience members where the audience members can be the judge. Oh, we got to hit. We got to
Yeah,
hit.
yeah.
Imagine overcooked, but like you're going around cooking a dish and such like that, and then you have to like present that dish instead of like presenting it to like the customer, so to speak. You present it to like a stage, and that stage has like 3 to 5 like judges on there, and then they
Yeah.
judge it based on how fast you were able to cook it, how good the dish is. I think we got something here.
We got okay. Any publishers listening? Where's the money? Bring in the
Yeah,
money.
exactly.
Write us a check, and we're gonna make this game.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Oh man, like, and the cool thing is you can make like all sorts of wacky like judges and in different like criterias and such like that. That'd be really cool. It'd be a cool
Mm,
concept.
that would be a cool concept.
Yeah,
Yeah, a judge who's like allergic to something.
exactly.
This
And you
needs to
kind of,
be a vegan meal, or like no
hmm
tree nuts, or like gluten free friendly, or
yeah.
yeah,
And then you
yeah.
can kind of like pause and go through your cookbook and such like that and see what recipes you've collected and such like that and unlocked.
I can picture this game in my mind.
Is
It's gonna be
your
fun,
gut
buddy.
telling you this is a good game for you after Witchmore at this point?
The gut likes it. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
done the market research yet. I'll have to dig into that.
Let me know when you do.
I
I'm
will.
interested. I'm intrigued.
I'll let you know.
For sure, for sure. But Matt, man, thank you so much for being on the show again. It's been fun,
What
absolute
a
fun.
pleasure. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
But all right, so Matt, I have had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of good laughs. Unfortunately, we've given away too many good ideas, that we probably should have kept to ourselves at this point. But before we go, where can the good people find you?
You can find me at valadria.com, VALADRIA.com. Everything's there. My podcast, Make the Game, my YouTube channel. My book is listed there, How to Make a Video Game All by Yourself, $10 an ebook, $15 paperback. And is there one more thing? Oh, my
Yeah,
game. There is.
yeah. Where do we wish list
Witchmore.
that?
Go to Steam, baby. Is
Mhm.
a link from valadria.com. But also go to Steam, search for Witchmore. It's one word, witch and more, the opposite of less. Search
Mhm.
for Witchmore. Give me a wish list. I would appreciate it. Hit that green button, and that way you'll get an email when it comes out. I'm going to launch it on discount as well. I've already decided. So
Mhm.
if you want an email in the future about a discounted cool game from me, go wish list Witchmore. Yeah, that's my pitch, man. I really appreciate it.
And one last time, for people who have questions about how to create video games, what kind of reference should they check out?
Well, that would be How to Make a Video Game All by Yourself.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Everyone, all the links will be in the description below, for the video game and for how to make a video game by yourself, the amazing book. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, sayonara. Peace out, man. Hey, thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked the video, hit that like button. Also, for more videos just like this one, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right here. Thanks again for watching the video, and for more like it, stay right here at the Pro Nerd Report channel. So that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit that like button.